Okay. Welcome to Farm Fresh Food Boxes, Session 2 of the short course. My name is Lisa Chase, and I'm with University of Vermont Extension and the Vermont Tourism Research Center. Will you go to the next slide, Diane? As we mentioned before this started, all participants are muted. However, at any time, feel free to type into the chat box, whether it's technical difficulties or questions or whatever, feel free to do that. And then we will have some periods when you can unmute yourself and we can have conversations and share ideas and questions verbally. You should have, oh, can you go back just one second, Diane? You should have received a copy of the toolkit. If you haven't, please take a moment now to write your email address in the chat box and we'll make sure we send it to you. We are recording this for future distribution, and on our website will be the recording as well as in the Google Drive. Next slide. This is our project team. We're all here today, although the main presenters will be Diane Smith from Washington State University Extension and Hans Estrin from University of Vermont Extension. However, the rest of the team is here and we may be chiming in at different points. Next slide. We want to take a moment now though, just to check in and see who's here other than the presenters. So Weiwei has put up a poll, and if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to fill in the poll. There's 3 questions and all the questions may not show. The first one is, were you able to join us for session 1 of the short course? The next one is, tell us about yourself. Pick the one. We realize you may be in multiple categories, but pick the one that best describes yourself. And then also let us know how the homework assignment went for you. Starting at the top, I didn't make any progress on the assignment. Oh, by the way, I should let you know, this is anonymous. No need to feel guilt or anything like that. We don't even know who's responding, but answering this question will just help us better gauge where we are as a group as we move forward with what we've got planned for today's short course. So at the top, if you just were busy, didn't have ideas, didn't do a thing, click that top button, and then moving down to, I did it. I confirmed at least 1 farmer retailer pair for this F3B project. That's at the bottom. Click whichever box seems to make the most sense for you.
Can I also say about that, if you are a service provider or not a farmer and you had not planned, you were doing this for, just for your own edification, you could still, did you think about this, who in your area might want to do it? That would really be your assignment. And I think if you went whole hog, it would be that you actually reached out to some of them. But I doubt that's the case, but maybe it is.
And whenever you're ready, Weiwei, if you wouldn't mind publishing the results. All right, looks like we have a few newcomers, which is good to know. So we'll make sure when we talk about what we did last time, spend a little more time on it. And looks like it's mostly farmers as well as some extension agents. And then, hey, everybody did at least something. So that's great. And let's see, I think we've just got one more slide here where we want to pause for questions. Oh, sorry. Before that, what we're going to do today is we've already pretty much done our introduction. So what we're going to do next is Diane is going to take us into the logistics of running Farm Fresh Food Boxes. And then Diane and Hans combined actually have an activity for you to walk you through and get you used to the feeling of dealing with some of the challenges and some of the fun parts of working through an F3B season. And then we'll leave 10 minutes at the end to give you yet another homework assignment. and also check in, one more poll to ask you how things went. And now we'll just pause for a moment for questions. I don't see anything in the chat, so I think we're good.
We're set to go.
Something else that I want to mention is, in addition to the chat, if you ever want to raise your hand, if you click on the participant button, you'll see that there's a way for you to raise your hand. So that's another way to get our attention. And now I'm going to hand it over to Diane to take us through the logistics.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. I'm Diane Smith. I work with Washington State University Extension. I am a family and consumer science specialist, and I focus my work on food access and health promotion. I want to share with you a little bit about my motivation for participating in this project, and then also share the logistics that we learned through this pilot season, the last 3 seasons, as far as what is the best practice. As a family consumer science specialist in food access and health promotion, my focus truly is that consumer facing piece of the food systems wheel that we are so also familiar with. We know that the access to food and healthy options impacts the health of the community in a significant way. Because of this work, I have done a lot with direct-to-consumer projects with farmers markets, CSAs, as well as this project, the Farm Fresh Food Box. Through my work, I've met several farmers as well as worked with retailers to find out the best way to reach our customers, to promote economic development, and to also make sure that the food that's available, especially in our valley, Skagit Valley in Northwest Washington, is it's considered the garden to Seattle. We have a great deal of diverse vegetables and produce and fruits being grown. So how do we get that to the consumers, especially those that live in the valley? So this project became a very important a piece of the work that I do. In developing the logistics for this project, we have found that the foundational relationship between the farmer, the grower, and the retailer is paramount in making sure, predicting the success of the project throughout the season. Taking that time, like what I just did, introducing myself, what's motivating me, what's important, has really plays a real key role in that buy-in and that win-win relationship that is established between the grower and the retailer. Some of the things that we'll be talking about is that pre-season planning. How to have those regular checkups without becoming overwhelming, and some of the problem solving that we did in making this project move forward. When we talk about the pre-season meeting, a big part of it is getting to know you. I have found that it was really useful to do face-to-face meetings, and these initially were short. Hi, how are you? I'm in the community. This is what I do. Let me know your business. And this gave me that familiarity that allowed to develop a further and deeper relationship. As you're doing this foundational work together, it may not happen all in one session. It may be a couple of meet and greets, and then you sit down for that 30 minutes to really hash out what needs to be done through the season so that both the grower and the retailer feel successful. This gives us an opportunity to become familiar with each other's business. As a farmer grower, you have certain practices that you will implement that you might want to highlight. You may not be organic, but you follow organic practices. You have a sustainable food system bent. You have certain products that you feature that you want, that you're really proud of, and you want to make sure that the customer as well as the retailer knows about. The converse to that is making sure that the retailer, that you know the retailer, and the retailer has a chance to describe their business to you so that you know what their mission is and what they want to see out of this relationship. Do they have a deli case that maybe you can provide some collateral sales so that they can stock their, like in a wholesale, stock their other food businesses, as well as providing a food box. And then establishing those shared goals and expectations through the season. What is it going to look like? So having that face-to-face meeting really helps to hash out that piece so that you both understand and have and have an understanding so that when something comes up, which inevitably it will, you have an opportunity to step back and say, oh yeah, this was our goal, this was my expectation, it was or wasn't met. This is a tool, the toolkit that you have access to. And I'm sorry I don't have a slide of it, but the toolkit has many templates that help you go through some of the tasks that are required to be successful in the day-to-day logistics. This is a worksheet that will allow you to set goals so that both you and the retailer and the extension agent can also help in facilitating that conversation. So why do you want to do this? What would be some of the constraints? Listing the potential partners, as well as describing the potential of that synergy. Where is that win-win going to be located? Hans, would you like to go through some of this information?
Yeah, and I'm looking at our participants, and this is just a sort of normal size classroom. We got 14 people in our room, and 8 of you are 5 are presenters, 6 are presenters, and or the team, and 8 are farmers. So I think I'd love to take. So we're gonna, instead of doing exercise separate, we're embedding a few breaks, pauses, and what we're gonna do right now is actually look back at the week. It seems like a lot of people made some progress, at least, either in thinking about who they might reach out to, identifying or reaching out. And so we can do this in the chat box, but we do have the opportunity really to have a discussion. So I think, what I would like to do is just take a moment, and I think we can, if I call on you, I'd love to just have everyone, there's only 8 people, just say your name and where you're coming from or where you're calling in from, just so we get a sense of the folks who are here, and what, where you're coming from. And then when you speak, it just is a little bit more relevant. So I want to take just a couple minutes to do that. I think it's worth it. And if you're having trouble unmuting yourself, Weiwei, would you be able to actually unmute them when I call them out? Are you looking at the participants? Yep. Okay. So the first one I see is Barna, or I think that's right. I might pronounce it wrong. And Barna, if you're there, maybe just introduce yourself and where you're coming from. And that's really it. And we'll work on or look at these questions as well. You're welcome to say something about this, but we can also hold it until the discussion we're about to have. So Barna, are you there, or can you unmute yourself?
I think Barnes, I don't know, the S.
Barnes, yeah.
So I have a couple small stores that are close to me, but they're really not interested in partnering. I think because, we're all doing pretty similar things, and they also have delis and all that. So I think maybe to add that extra to them, they just weren't interested in this.
Can you say where you're coming from? And
sorry, I'm in Orwell.
Orwell, Vermont. And are you a grower, a farmer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, in Orwell. Okay, great. So yeah, maybe we'll just do the whole thing. So instead of writing that, you can definitely write in the chat box, but since we've dove into this, like reached out and no one who you thought of is interested, and then any open discussion would be really, so what are you going to do? Are there other stores you want to reach out to? You want to just kind of think about this and scratch your head, anything on that. And if anyone wants to jump in here, that's fine too.
So I think I mentioned the last time that in the last webinar that we've been doing what we call a root crop box.
Right. So that's working.
And it's, yes, people have to come here to pick it up, but we're not that far from either one of the stores either.
Right.
So for this time of year, we've been happy with the response.
Yep. And I just realized that you were Paula. I've never met you, but so Paula and I actually communicate by email quite a bit. So hi there. Barna, the Barna
Barna.
that threw me off. Barnes. All right. Well, great. Well, and I think sticking with this and sort of thinking through options can only help your business. You know, so it's a good, you know, to keep thinking about these kinds of possibilities. Okay, so we then had Newcomb, I think. Is that right? EJ Newcomb. Unmute yourself. Yep, there. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
Having trouble
Okay.
unmuting.
Yeah, Claire, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Where are you coming from?
Oh, I'm a grower in Tonasket, Washington. It's central Washington, way up near the Canadian border. And
Yeah.
we grow apples and pears.
Great.
And in terms of this project, I've just been doing a lot of head scratching. The difficulty is, one is that we're in a small rural community, quite far removed from larger population. And as well, where we are, lots of people grow apples and pears.
Right.
So that's sort of the challenge. So I haven't gotten beyond the point of thinking about this dilemma.
And this is a real good time too to just create that space to sort of scratch your head on this. So that's a way to.
Right. And I would say about us, I don't know how much you know about Washington apple industry, but we are what would be considered a mid-size orchard. And those are the ones that are kind of struggling the most because we have enough volume that we have quite a lot volume, but not enough to be as efficient as those people who are growing on 500 acres. You know, we have about 100 acres, but we're too big. We're not just 10 acres where we can, you know, easily market it ourselves.
Right.
And so I have a question. Do you have other direct-to-consumer avenues that you use, like the farmer's market or a CSA, a fruit CSA?
Yes, I come over to Seattle area and do 2 farmers markets, but and we also work. Do you know Link in Spokane?
Yes, yes.
We work with them. We used to, and we used to be part of the Puget Sound food hub when we grew blueberries on Whidbey Island, so we were on that part, but we can no longer be part of that, you know. And so there's a lot less infrastructure over here in this rural community than there is on the west side.
Right. Well, this is, you know, you might not be able to use this Farm Fresh Food Boxes in its specific model, but creating the space to think about it and some of the strategies will likely give you some ideas about how to access people or what some of the needs might be. So good that you're here.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's why I've joined this course.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, and let's look at, so I guess Newcomb, I think was now unmuted, maybe? Just give you a chance here to speak up.
She mentioned she was having a hard time, so
Right,
I would say keep moving on.
Elizabeth, if you're available to just jump right on, that would be, and again, introduce yourself and where you're coming from. Elizabeth, are you there? We can skip over this if it's not working. I mean, this is the problem with doing this. She's tried to unmute too. Okay, George, I think we did Claire already, right? Georgette, are you out there? We spoke with you some last time, but maybe just again say where you're coming from quick and anything you want to say about the assignment.
I'm in Vermont, northern Vermont. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
So I did try to speak with one convenience store owner. And I went in cold because I didn't have any paperwork with me. I went in to meet and see who the manager was and so forth. I think it might have been helpful if I'd had some paperwork with me. I mean, but I did just introduce myself and explain a little bit about it. And it's hard to tell whether he actually would be, I mean, he had to go like do the bottle return and something with the gas pumps, like you said, wait on a few customers. So I'm not sure. I mean, he gave me his email address, but I'm not sure how interested he is and whether I should have been more approached it differently in the first time in. And also, in regard to some of the other folks, there's a lot of really good organic farms around the area that are much bigger, that have different ways of selling their produce. There's a couple of stores nearby that have produce departments that already buy from the larger, small local farms. So it's kind of a competition here on how to find the niche of where I'm supposed to be able to find some customers that could be on the scale of what we produce, which is small.
Mhm.
Certainly we can produce it and we can supply, you know, a few stores each week if we can get their accounts. But as far as doing the boxes, I'm not sure. We'd have to expand
Mhm.
and add a little more variety to what we have to offer in a box.
Yeah, that niche is a really important idea, like thinking about what each of you do well and what could be provided and if it's different. So, you know, like Georgette, I know you grow some really great kind of heirloom tomatoes, and maybe it's a little tomato box, you know, each week, and it has a specific thing in it or whatever. So thinking through like that kind of thing about what could be different and be provided. So, okay, let's keep going. And we're going to jump into all these details. So that's Claire. I think Claire we got. George, I'm not sure what that is. George Bright. It's hard to know. Jay Bright or Gabright. Maybe you could unmute yourself if you can. And Judy, why don't you line up in case you're there and could talk? And whoever gets there first.
Here. Can you
Yep.
hear me?
Yep, Judy,
This is Judy. I'm Judy and I'm in the Tri-Cities, Washington, specifically Kennewick. We are just starting a U-Pick gardens and blueberries. Our blueberries will be ready this summer. I did went in and talked to the owner of a small convenience store. And when I explained what I was looking to do, or if he was interested, his concern was having the cooler space to store the boxes. And then the next thing was how to handle payments and stuff. He did offer that we could drop them off if people wanted to pick them up there. So, but he says they would have to pick them up quickly or fairly soon after I dropped them off due to the fact that he didn't have the cooler space. So he was more receptive to it. Granted, we were only like 3 or 4 blocks down the road from him, so why not just stop by the farm there? But he was receptive to the idea. It was just that he was concerned about cooler space and that kind of stuff. So
that sounds really typical to me in my experience.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So I would take that as not a bad sign.
No, right. I was just and he was very
Yeah.
friendly, so I think he was open to it, and just go back in and talk to him, keep an open conversation with him. So yeah.
Okay, so was there anyone else who's able to talk right now who I'm missing? The names all are jumping around, so I've gotten disorganized, but there weren't, we should be pretty close if we discount the people who couldn't unmute. It's okay, we can use the chat box either way, and then you could call in as well.
Hello?
Yeah, who's that?
This is Elizabeth. I just tried to call in.
Okay, you're gonna need to mute your computer if you're gonna talk on the phone because we get feedback.
Okay, let me.
And
Okay, is that better?
A little bit.
yeah, it might be. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll keep moving on this.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Beautiful.
Okay. Hi, I'm Liz Echeverria. I'm in northern Vermont in Craftsbury, and I'm a very small farmer. I currently sell at the farmers market. I'm looking for another direct-to-market avenue. It's kind of a funny location in a way because it's quite rural. I'm also next to one of the largest organic producers in the state, Pete's Greens, which is also in the town. So, but there still is a lot of niches and a lot of people who I think support me and would buy more than they do at the farmers market if they had a more convenient access point. So I'm just trying to navigate that in order to sort of create some new niches in the community.
Great.
Elizabeth or Liz, I just want to branch out since you call yourself Liz, right?
I do. Yep.
Okay. I just want to bring up the idea that it doesn't only have to be a typical store. For example, I'm thinking of the Craftsbury Outdoor Center. I don't know how close you are and how convenient they are, that that space is for you, but there are a lot of regular skiers there, people who go there regularly to ski or run or bike or take workshops. So I don't know if you already have a relationship with them, but that may be a possible place if we can think more creatively than, just stores. It could be any kind of space that you could work with.
Gotcha. That's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of that. I was able to talk with somebody who has a little farm stand next to Pete's Greens farm stand, and they sell meat and maple syrup primarily. And that also might be a good avenue because it's kind of a self-serve farm stand sort of setup, but they don't sell produce, so it would be a bit of a nice balance there. But I have a lot of questions about logistics. Although the Craftsbury Outdoor Center, that's a really neat idea.
Yeah, that's great, Lisa. Good idea. And Liz, if you want to send me by email your either contact, or I guess I could get your phone here, but I'd be more than happy to follow up. I'm actually going to be in Craftsbury tomorrow afternoon. Not that everyone needs to know. At Pete's Greens, so I could easily stop by, meet you.
Yeah.
All right.
So sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I just said got you. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, great. I just wanted to point out that in the chat, Julie is wrote in the chat box here from Cloud 11 Mountain Farm in Idaho near Canada and Montana borders, growing organic produce recently approved for certified naturally grown and in the application process for certified organic. On a steering committee to research the development of an online local producers cooperative and received a SARE grant to pursue this. That's terrific. Participating in local farmers markets, expanding to 2 additional markets this season, and looking into using online sales platform for selling direct to consumer locally. You've got a lot going on, and it's great the way you're looking at a variety of different channels and avenues. Thank you for typing into the chat box.
Great. Anyway, this is awesome. Way more than I thought we were going to get in this, so that's great. And anyone else that I've missed, I'm going to just give a second if you were out there and didn't introduce yourself. And I will say, this is typical. Like, again, I think I mentioned this last time. Branching into new kind of channels and markets, and there's all sorts of different innovation going on. The consumers aren't really ready for it yet, right? Because of a lot of different barriers, from cooking, scratch cooking, knowing what to do. So we're trying to reach new consumers in new places. And it really takes creative thinking. It takes time, and it takes cultivation, market development. And so it's just starting that process and thinking creatively is really what we were up to last week. And I will say that this worksheet in with the goals, it definitely use if you haven't, if you want to keep working at this or try someone else, just to sort of think about putting that stuff down and getting some of those, especially synergistic goals. What if you connect with someone who's receptive, what is it they could get out of this? And you'll have some more materials if you have this toolkit in your hands.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Yes.
go on, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so building on that, Hans, thanks. Within the toolkit, we do have information about what's in it for the farmers and the retailer, as well as motivation within the food systems level. So as you're looking for material to review before you go in to introduce yourself and meet and greet with a retailer or a grocer, then this would be a good resource. So that is available on the web page. As you're meeting folks, it's important to not only exchange information, but to really assess out what's going to be the best contact method. We found, my experience has been some farmer retailers like to text each other, and so they set up a regular text chat. Others preferred getting a phone call and then email. So not only how to contact them, but what is the preferred method? And then as we all know, we get very busy, and so what's the best time if you're going to be communicating different orders and what's available in the box? So not only who we are and how to contact us, but how to contact us as far as method and the best time to touch base. In the preseason, setting up a notice and delivery schedule is important. The farmer, so in selecting consistent days for the farmer to notify the retailer of what's going to be harvested, and then identifying when the retailer can then notify the farmer of the number of boxes that were sold. And then the third is the farmer, when is he going to drop it off, on what day, and what time frame. The concern of a cooler was also something that we came up against in my community. Some of the retailers didn't have the cooler space, but because the time frame was so short, the produce was safe, was still in good quality by the time the customers picked it up. In another retailer, they found space within the cooler, and they were able to accommodate that drop-off point. A sample schedule, just to give you an idea about what the week might look like. On Thursday and Friday, the farmer would notify the retailer what would be available in the upcoming box, and then the retailer would post the content so the customers, as they come in through the week and through the weekend, they would be able to see what's going to be available, and yes, I want to buy one. And then between Friday and Monday, the customer says, yes, here's my prepayment, and I'll be back to pick it up on the pickup day, which is later. They do have to go back to the store to pick it up. And then Monday evening, the retailer notifies the farmer, I need X number of boxes. Tuesday, the farmer harvests the produce and will pack the box. And then on Wednesday, the farmer delivers the boxes and collects the payment that the retailer has collected from the customers. And at that time, the customers have a window to pick up the product. So this is kind of a predictable, regular schedule. Once the routine and the rhythm is set, it makes it very easy and seamless. You can, one of the suggestions or one of the ideas that one of the growers had was to have a box that was specific to what was available and seasonal, so a pesto box, so items that families could prepare a pesto, a salsa box, making sure that the order size is communicated, that consistent order, time and location, and coming up with a contingency plan. The one that we came across was a customer didn't pick up the box. They paid for the box, didn't pick it up, couldn't be reached. And so there was an agreement upon what would happen to that box in light that the customer didn't pick it up. Payment. Payment for it, there can be a large variety of strategies for payment method. Cash is was used by one one retailer exclusively. We were in a taqueria. They accepted debit and credit cards. Online sales, I had not tested that, but there was a lot of conversation on how could online sales be generated so that the customer would not have to come in twice. And then another option would be gift cards. As you're deciding what payment plan, consider what the accounting practice is going to be. The debit or credit card may require a fee payment, and so calculating that into the cost of the box and what the retailer might want in compensation. Decide how the farmer is going to be paid. Is it going to be cash across the board? Is it going to be a check at the end of at the time of pickup, or is it going to be an online payment? And then agree on whether or not the retailer receives a percent of the box sale. This could be a percent or a dollar amount for each box sold. As part of this project, we did supply boxes for the farmers as well as a small stipend for the retailer for participating and collecting data. There are some tools you can use to track customer sales. The one that we use for cash is the envelope system on the right side of the screen. And this is where a small rural retailer would write the name, the phone number so they could contact, the date that it was delivered, and the dollar amount. And then he would put the money, the cash, into the envelope, kept it at the cash register. And then when the grower came in and dropped off the boxes, then he would just give the envelope to the farmer. Other ways of making sure that you track sales and the customers have a receipt is this small one on the left-hand side. This is something that can be filled out by the market, who it was, so that way, in case a customer doesn't pick it in or if the delivery is late, they can be contacted. And then on the other side is a receipt for the customer, so they remember when they're supposed to come in, what the time frame is, and where the pickup location. Another strategy would be the one on the top, which is a table, which has that very same information as far as who the customer was and what was the payment. Any questions about this tracking system, or can you think of ways that you might also track customers? We don't have any retailers on.
Hey, and this is Julia. I just had a comment about the tracking system. So this is Julia Van Solen Kim. I'm an extension agent in California and was running some of the pilots in California. And one complexity that we ran into that we didn't anticipate was that in between time when orders have closed for 1 week, but people are still placing orders for the following week. And so you may have 2 sets of weeks of orders in an envelope or on a list. And so then you need to take into account which orders are for, say, calling in that evening, and the customer is going to pick them up the next morning, and which are for the subsequent week. So keeping track of that was one complexity that was important. And then I had a comment just about the cold storage, that it was a really common concern with the retailers around whether they had freezer space, or not freezer, cold storage space. And the way that I started that conversation was for them to tell us how many boxes could they confidently fit, and if it was 3 boxes a week or 5 or 10. And from our experience with these pilot projects, sales were low, especially at the beginning. And so assuring the retailer that we're not talking about 30 boxes in 1 week. We're talking about 5 or 10 boxes if it's really successful in 1 week. So I think that's another conversation point, is that they're in the driver's seat of choosing what sales level works for them, at least in the beginning phases.
Oh, thanks for that. That's great. Any other comments, questions?
I just want to say you saw these. It's coming out backwards, I think. Yeah, we have, I don't know if anyone else does. I have some extra ones, especially farms in Vermont. I'd be happy to, these are really high quality stickers that can go on boxes if you want to use them to get started. I definitely have some I can send. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay. This next template looks at the matchmaking and the planning of the checklist. And I think Hans is going to go through this with you. No, yes. Okay. So this is the matchmaking.
I'm here, sorry.
Okay, that's
I was
okay.
muted.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, let's feel free to use the chat box in this, but I'm gonna show you these two. This is really kind of introducing this, how to get into this. I mean, once you find, make a contact, you have some receptibility and like, yeah, let's explore this. Really that sit down meeting, which is what Diana has been talking about, is to kind of get into this in a little bit more depth. Now, this may not be your final, like this is exactly what you're going to do, because you really got to think through, the marketing, the kind of box, the price tolerance, the kind of customers, that kind of stuff. So, but this is, this first template here is really a checklist of kind of all the key things that you want to make sure you kind of hit in the beginning. And you will as you look through this, it kind of makes sense. There's that goal stuff sort of again up front, and then roles and responsibilities, like what it would actually look like, some of the program specifics for start and end date, when could it happen? And of course, this doesn't have to be dialed in, but it is getting some of this down. And this is where some of the barriers come up and some of the benefits, and always be attuned to collateral sales or opportunities or the win-wins. That's always really important. Who and the payment and financial logistics. So it's sort of a checklist. Next slide. So this is where you can kind of put down the essential information from that down in the weeds meeting, if you will, where you're going in a little deeper. Really important, best contact information. Approximate box type. What does it look like? If you want to go for a specialty kind of box, what's that niche that you think you could do that the customers might go for? Is it a complete, just like 3 salads in a box, or, specific seasonal things that you think might sell? Or is it a general, diversified, sort of really common, like CSA kind of box? What would the price be approximately? What kinds of seasons could you work? Periodicity is really just like, is it a weekly thing? Is it bi-monthly? Is it, how often? And it may even start like you just want to do a couple of seasonal things. So four different boxes, and you promote them. But whatever it is, you've got a system. So, and then what is that system? What's the timeline look like? Well, what could it look like? So, and this is, there's a system here. And of course, this could be pretty simple especially if you say did online sales from your farm store, your online farm store, which then it might be something as simple as the farm's promoting and doing all the things, and the store helps promote it and then just acts as a pickup spot. That would be the simplest, and to a much more uniform thing where the retailer is really advertising and promoting this as part of their marketing plan for their store, and accepting payments, and maybe they have a gift card, and that kind of thing. So this is what we're going to get into in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully you can work with this and it will be helpful. Next slide, or click.
Actually, Hans, can I jump in
Yeah.
with a question from the chat box?
Yep. So that's exactly what we're doing now. So shoot, and why don't you go, Lisa, and then I'll ask some more detailed questions to put in the chat box. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, so this is a question from Julie mentioning that last time we talked about how boxes could not be reused. And so she's bringing up that question about, what are the rules around reusing boxes, and, looking at issues of waste and reduce and recycling, what are the most sustainable ways to run this project?
Right. Okay, so my other main hat that I wear, and I don't have a hat I can put on that's going to work for this, is food. I'm a food safety specialist, or produce safety. So yes, so boxes is an issue. I mean, ideally, what you would do is something like a CSA where you've got commitment from customers. They don't want a box every week, but they know they want 10 boxes over the season or something like that. And they put a deposit down on a box and you have enough in stock, like plastic flip top boxes or whatever it is that you can rotate them out. And then you have control. The key is that you want to pack the food safety or produce safety standard, food safety standard is that you or someone has control over the cleaning of a box, and that it is cleanable. And whether it's a single use, that would be controlled because you're getting something in a sterile condition, it goes out. But if it's a wax box, you can't actually, in theory, clean it. And if it comes back, you don't know where it's been. So in that case, it would be based on trust. It probably is fine, but we can't say from sort of an official perspective that it is safe. So it's a difficult situation. Single use, like kinds of flip tops or even, clear plastic kinds of things, and just factor that into the price might be a good way to start. And then if you can get something going with committed customers, then that's when you would look to doing a different kind of system. But I think that's my best recommendation, at least with that produce safety hat on. And then the reused box, you could put a liner in it, possibly, like a clear plastic food grade liner, that kind of thing, which doesn't work that well for wet vegetables. Or, there are bags that you can get with vented bags that potentially could work and would be better, but that's still not ideal if they have holes in them. Okay, so that's my spiel, and it doesn't really answer the question, but there we go.
And just to answer the question for what we did do for our pilot sites, we did wax boxes across all of the pilot sites. And evaluation data from customers was not mentioned by the vast majority of customers, but a few customers did bring up the fact that wax boxes aren't recyclable. My hunch is most consumers don't know that, and so most wax boxes probably ended up in the recycling. And then from farmers, the cost of the wax boxes, if that was something that they weren't used to ordering, was a little bit of a sticker shock. But for most CSA operations, they're used to ordering wax boxes anyways.
Yeah, and we're talking $1.50 a pop for, a half bushel or something like that, or 3/4. Okay, so let's do chat box here, unless I guess you can unmute too, but maybe write in the chat box. So we just jumped into a bunch of sort of logistics. So any kind of questions or red flags that come up, oops, go back to that. Any new ideas or variants that are coming into your head? Any comments of lessons learned so far? Like Paula, with, what you've done so far, and with boxes or payment, things that have worked. Areas of potential. So, throw anything out that you think might have potential. And then we can just have a little discussion here and see what comes into the chat box, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves, let's just wing it for a few minutes here, see how it goes. I will say, while we're waiting here for stuff to come in, we're going to get into marketing, marketing stuff and customers, really important as well. But this is really just, at this point, just kind of thinking about some possibilities for logistics. So that's coming. Okay, we have
so you
yep.
can see the comments in the chat box, right?
Yeah, I can see them. I'm going to make them bigger so I can really see them. Okay. So I'm just going to be quiet here for maybe another 30 seconds. There's some comments in the chat box, and I will get to those. We'll have a chance to discuss those, but just wait for anything else to come in. And if anyone wants to unmute themselves and speak, they can do that. Otherwise, we'll use the chat. Okay. Feel free to keep writing if you are. So has anyone in pilot, and this is from Elizabeth, is anyone in the pilot programs tried either ice packs in boxes or tried plugging in an existing fridge or cooler of some sort in a retailer location to solve the cold storage issue? FarmStand I've spoken with doesn't have cooler space, but they have the space to plug in a self-serve fridge. I've considered ordering online and then pick up at this spot with a self-serve fridge. Anyone done something like this? So I can speak to that, or I'll be quiet and let others jump in. So I'll just say yes. I've experienced this in Vermont, not with this project, but with some CSAs and also a dairy CSA kind of thing. Not dairy, cheese and yogurt. So, but not like fresh dairy. So anyway, it's possible, I would say, and that gives you more flexibility in the drop-off, and it would also, combined with online sales, be probably one of the easiest things for a store to support. Any other comments on that?
This is Lisa. I'll just chime in to say it's a great idea. And, you know, part of the goal of this short course is to let you know we don't necessarily have all the answers. And, you know, this idea of you work with the retailer, you have your own fridge there, and, you know, they provide you the space and the electricity that, for you to connect to your fridge. I think it's a fantastic idea. And for all of you folks who are going to be trying new and different things after this course ends, let's stay in touch and follow up, and we can all learn from each other's trials and errors and experiences.
And in Skagit County, the one thing we found is the box prices. It was established in the beginning. One farmer had two different sets. One was a small and a large box. One was set at one was set at $12, the other was at $20. And she realized that the customers were always going for the smaller box. And so through that feedback from the retailer and then also from the customers, she just offered one box. It was $15 for the box. There was another farmer that offered 3 sizes. It worked well. And so she had a small, medium, and large. The range was from $11.50 to $22.50. And then the third farmer just had a flat rate of $20, and that continued through the whole season. So this is one of those negotiation pieces that as a farmer you would be considering, okay, well, what is the customer going to accept in terms of wanting to pay what dollar amount, and then also adjusting from there.
Great. So again, I encourage anyone to unmute at any time if you want to talk, because we have few enough people that can work. And we'll just keep going through some of these chats. So Georgette says, guess it's important to know that, quote, boxes could be set as a different smaller size with special label like Hans has on some other smaller container. The specialty target box like pesto making box is a great idea. Perhaps there can be examples of certain boxes and prices. Can we brainstorm a list here or collect a list to consider? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, boxes is just a term, right, that was used, but that could be a tomato tote or a pesto pack or, you know, some other kind of catchy smaller thing that, you know, that's what sells, is like when there's something that seems to stand out and people want, you know, and especially in season. Or, you know, for a particular holiday or like changing things up. So yeah, and often a bag or something else could be a less expensive and possibly clear solution for some kind of packaging that might end up working really well. So anyone want to throw out even in the text box or list a couple of ideas, and including, you know, I'll throw a couple out, like this So the what was it? A root crop. What did Jericho settlers call it? You know, it's just like a 25-pound root crop bag that they put with all colorful roots, and it was some catchy name that they did for the
Was
for
it
this.
winter survival box, right?
Yeah, that was a different one, which is also good. The survival pack, survival box, or survival pack, and that was during the political like season, you know, season of the voting season, when there's a lot of sort of, you know, hubbub about the world ending and stuff. So, you know, just what would work, or what can you pick up on? So yeah, root crop bag. That's being able to see the stuff is really important, and sort of highlight, you know, especially for the retailer, to be able to put a, you know, and then the root crops they could even stock, so you can actually have those potentially sitting in colorful looking bags in a mix, a pack of some kind. This 3 salads in a box, you know, like the even clamshell kind of things. It can work really well to just highlight that what the value is really quick. A customer can see very quickly that there are 3 beautiful salads sitting right there, and you know, they know the value of that, you know, ready to go, or you know, the ingredients to make a certain thing ready to go with a recipe, or you know, something like that. Other things?
I'll chime in, Hans. This is
Yep.
Julia again from California, and I added in the box what we saw in our pilot was customizable sizes, so small, medium, and large sizes to get at the price point issue of consumers not always being ready to hand over $20 or more for a box, but maybe $15 or $12 for a smaller box. We saw some use of customizable boxes where customers could choose a few certain customizable options. Hans mentioned the winter survival box and the root veggie box. And then other ideas I've run into is a fruit only box in the summertime, the Thanksgiving feast box, and a juicing box. So especially with juicing being really popular, at least in California, farmers here have had good success with juicing boxes.
Great. Hey, and Julia, thanks. And can you also just, I'll do this too, but in the pilot project, Claire had asked a question about all the different types of retail stores that partnered. Maybe you could just say what there was in California, and I'll mention Vermont, and Diane, you can mention Washington.
Sure. So in California, there was one stop and go gas station, liquor mart, taqueria. And that was on a really busy corner of a rural area. So customers were coming in sort of all hours of the day to pick up beer and get gas and get burritos. So that was one location. One was a local only food store. So they sold all local products coming from within that county. And the owner was very committed to local, but didn't stock vegetables, fruits and vegetables. He only stocked more like shelf stable vinegars and wines and pastas. Interestingly, that was also a really active stop for people picking up local beer and local wine. So even though it had a very different vibe than the liquor market, it was equal amount of traffic of people picking up alcohol. And then the third location was a very rural, small town health food store that had a deli and sort of high-end health foods for the sort of back to the land kind of health conscious crowd out in the rural area. And they similarly didn't stock produce. Actually, all three of them did not stock produce prior to the project.
Great. In Vermont, we had a diversity. There was like a little quick stop store with some gas, 2 general stores, a bigger gas convenience store chain with like 40 stores in the chain, but they didn't all do it, just one. And then a community feed store and a village, like a village mart in the outskirts of a small city in Vermont with like soft serve, like right on the street. And I think that's about it.
Okay, and then in Washington, we had a bakery. This was a bakery located upriver, it's about 45 minutes from the central, from the largest town. And the bakery became the stop point for a farmer upriver as well. We had one at a taqueria, and the taqueria was located on the road that went out to a community where people would vacation on the weekend. So it's a retirement community. People would come up from Seattle. They would drive down this highway and then go to their weekend home. And so that was a stopping place. It was within a taqueria, and the owner saw that there were a couple of collateral sales in that they would stop, they would get lunch and then pick up the box. And then the third was a rural country store, which is probably the most typical that you would think in terms of a retailer partner. None of the bakery did not have produce for sale, neither did the taqueria. The small rural grocery store had bananas and I think limes, but other than that, there was no other produce being sold. And so this met a niche for what they perceived as their customer interest and need.
Thanks. Okay, so we have a little less than 30 minutes left, and we're really diving into some great stuff, and we're looking at your kind of the next steps after you've kind of identify a partner. Really is get into, what am I going to do? What's the niche that we're going to fill here? And where are the win-wins? What's workable solution, workable logistics? And that's the homework coming. We'll return to that right at the end. But Diana, why don't you take it away and we'll get through the rest of this
through
stuff.
the rest. Okay. And the one thing I want to add is that one of the farmers worked in a farmer's market and had a CSA. And so she was interested in providing what she called a surprise box. So anything that was left over from her weekend sales, she put into a box. The price point could be lower, and a handful of customers were interested in this because it was they were getting the produce. They knew the farmer who was offering it, and they felt that both the farmer and the customer felt it was a good price point. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about getting the word out. As a grower, you want to sell your product. As a retailer, you want to partner with someone who can represent your business, and the retailer would represent the farmer's business. So these are some strategies for getting the word out that we used in our project. Probably the most valuable is the in-store display, which lists the food the produce that's going to be in the box in the upcoming week. And theoretically, the customer would come in, they would see what was available, and they would either purchase a box or wait till the next week to purchase a box. Some of the highlights was it was organic, it was local, it was seasonal, and this came from Waxwing Farm, which was just establishing and was trying to make a reputation for itself as having high quality. Another strategy that was the most successful was the direct mailing. So targeting a zip code and sending out a mailer. We saw an increase in sales for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then they started to fall off. But the direct mailing is another marketing strategy. When you ask about where the Farm Fresh Food Box could be sold or who to partner with, we have that typical store. We also have the bakery that I talked about and a taqueria. So we oftentimes think of a rural store, but it could be a community meeting space that would then be interested in being that go-between for providing produce to the community. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are all ways of getting the word out to a wider audience. One thing we heard was that the customers wanted recipes. They saw products that they didn't necessarily know how to cook, and they weren't familiar with it. So we developed a Facebook page and posted pictures of the produce as well as recipes. And then at one time, the grower actually included print recipes in the boxes that were delivered. Handbills, we have sample handbills in the Google Drive that you can modify so that you don't have to recreate from the get-go, but you can take and borrow what we've developed in our pilots. The toolkit is going to be Next class, we're going to delve into each of these areas. What's going to work for you? What templates do you need so that you can be successful with that? And this is where Hans will talk a little bit about,
Yep.
yeah.
Well, we don't have a lot of time, and
Mhm.
this is going to be a topic for next week. I mean, next
The homework?
class on March
Mhm.
5th. So,
Mhm.
but the reason we want to sort of bring this up here is that part of your work coming up, if you're getting into the logistics, is to think specifically about the customer pull and the competition, because that's going to determine what kind of box you might want to plan. And if you're not familiar with the term pull, you know, that's kind of comes out of lean farming and in this whole concept of that really the customer should pull the product. What do they want? What's the customer type? What are they looking for? How do they shop? How could you cultivate their loyalty? And so you're really trying to satisfy their pull or their desire. And what is the competition around? What's not being offered? Those are questions you really want to sort of think about from the start. And then the marketing plan for actually reaching that customer is really what we're going to get into next time. But we really got to do this up front. So maybe we don't necessarily need to discuss this. I just want to really make this point that in the toolkit, there's not only sort of a checklist for this marketing stuff, thinking about the customer type, but and what they're wanting, but also potentially wanting or what you think they want, but also a way, next slide, if you can do that, you know, just again, another blank template that checking in is going to be really important in the meetings with your retailer, but to get feedback right away and every week or two, what's going on, and how could we repair, you know, what hasn't worked, what has worked, you know, what can we do, and what are our lessons learned, that kind of thing. So know up front that this is really a development project. You're not going to make, most likely, you're not going to make a lot of money for a season. You're really putting some time in, thinking about new markets, how to expand, and just keep that in mind right from the start. Okay, I think let's look. Wait, there might be some chat here. Just yeah, I said in response to Georgette, you need to protect. She says you need to protect fruit like tomatoes and more perishable and root veggies. Hard hard surface fruits. It's hard to mix them in the same container, and that's true, definitely. And I only say, you know, this is an opportunity to really think about creative ways potentially to mix fragile fruit together. It might be you know, more attractive. So you could use a used box, but the same one that's returned potentially, but put a couple of clamshells in it, or I don't know what. But you know, thinking through some different things. All right, and Newcomb. A.M. Leonard has a nice craft paper pint and quart-sized box for fragile items that then can be inserted into a larger box. Great, that sounds awesome. I'd like to see that. Also, we use ice packs in our CSA, which is a cheap, is a cheap ice chest to keep food in our very hot summertime. These are returned and have to be washed each week. Yep, so as long as they have a washable surface, that's great, and you can do that. I can also provide, a link to lean farming concepts for those who want to learn more about it. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that during our call, but we'll get it out to you one way or another. Okay. Marilyn, finish up here.
Oh, okay, but so I wanted to share some of the troubleshooting. We'll talk a lot more about that next week, but I do want to bring up the one question that I get most frequently in the upfront is, are SNAP benefits allowed to be used to purchase the Farm Fresh food box? The USDA has a requirement that if a purchase is made, the food has to be taken that that at the same time. So there's no prepayment allowed when you use SNAP benefits unless it's directly to the farmer. And so this is one of the snafus or the stumbling blocks that we ran into. Many of our farmers wanted to sell to families that use SNAP benefits, but because of this barrier, we were unable to. There are new rules that are being explored with USDA. Just recently, they've implemented or piloted, or they're piloting in certain locations. Seattle, one of them, is online purchases with SNAP benefits through Amazon. And so there will be a model for this coming out, but currently there isn't one. And then next week, we'll talk about some of those other troubleshooting questions that might come up. So just to recap what we talked about today, I think we've all recognized the value of that foundational relationship of planning ahead and thinking about where's that win-win. How can we make sure that as many questions that we can anticipate in advance are addressed through these planning meetings. We're all busy people, and so maybe stopping by and just saying hi and checking in, and then taking maybe 20 to 30 minutes to really hash it out. The templates that are available through the toolkit are a really helpful tool to help you plan and think about what you want to move forward with. And it also can be helpful to then say, oh yeah, this is my plan, and give it to the retailer or your partner so that they can see that you've thought through many of the questions that they might have. Regular check-ins, making sure you do course correction throughout the season will help to problem solve and make you feel successful throughout. And Hans is going to give you your next homework assignment.
Right, and you've seen this, thanks, Diane. This is what we were looking at earlier. So, you know, if there's one thing we can point to, of course, all of you might be on your own timeline with this. So there's obviously flexibility, but this is really the idea for by March 5th, hopefully you come in with some progress on really getting into, you know, if you've found a potential partner, getting into the logistics. If you've struck out with potential partners, I'd really encourage you to kind of go ahead and do this anyway with a hypothetical, you know, what's your ideal situation? And then that might lead to some other opening, and maybe you think about some other possible contacts. So there are different ways to sort of think into this. And then, you know, really trying to get a more down in the weeds meeting. You know, it's going to take 20, 30 minutes. Probably it's best to do it face to face. And ideally when they're not, you know, a retailer isn't busy with other things, and that might be impossible. So you just make it work as you can. You know, best to get best contact methods and times. Really think about, brainstorm some different kinds of boxes and price ranges based on this idea of, you know, what the customers might want. And the retailer can provide a really lot of information there and see what's workable. Order and fulfillment, financial logistics. Can you outline that? And that's a big one. And that's where a lot of stuff comes up. Target dates, how often would you do it? Periodicity, and a possible task timeline. And that's really what this is, where you would write in, you know, what are your tasks and who's responsible for them in the time of week. And this, again, doesn't have to be a final draft, but just in hypothetically, you would talk through that and be able to kind of track it there. So, and lots of different payment methods. Really think of everything. You know, one thing a couple farmers mentioned that we haven't talked about is a POS display. So a virtual display that is like a little iPad, you know, in the store with a big sign, and it's like locked in. They have actual things, pre-made things with this, and it can be locked to your farm site, and people can order right there, you know, right on the iPad and pay with a credit card. No one's done that, but I know that it maybe has been experimented in different kinds of venues with different kinds of products. And, you know, it is something that could be probably tried without that much money if you already have online sales, that kind of thing. So you know, anything's possible. So questions, and we'll take a few minutes for that, and then we'll close things out and see you in a couple weeks. So I'll be looking at the chat here, and I'm also just seeing if anyone pipes up and unmutes themselves. And
Hans, while you're getting up to speed on the chat, I can just share. This is Julia again in California, and sharing that in our pilot process, we realized that there's sort of a fork in the road for this model to either scale up and go more of an online wholesale model where the orders are placed online and it's less involved, it involves the retailer less and it's more virtual. The retail location is simply the site where boxes are dropped off. And then the sort of the opposite, that it's more homey, more low tech, more paper and pencil order forms, and a more direct relationship between the farmer, the retailer, and the customer. And we saw that either going more homey, if that's the right word, or more formal, we saw that that was a decision point to be made. And from our evaluations, it seemed like most retailers and farmers really wanted that more homey model with built on relationships and less on the virtual model. Although I think it's certainly worth exploring the virtual model.
great. Anyone else? Let's see. I see from Jay Newcomb, I actually don't know your first name, but so are any of the F3B boxes or marketing materials available for farmers to use, or were these just developed for the pilot? And then Lisa wrote back, marketing materials are available for use as templates, and I don't think they're extra boxes. So yeah, yes to both of those things, that they were developed for the pilot and you can use them. So there are PowerPoint templates that are being shared. I think Weiwei can talk about how. So all of the, big posters, for sandwich boards, the 11 by 17 kind of flyers to go in stores. We have examples of all of those that you could just change the pictures and some of the text and the logos and just use them if you are familiar with PowerPoint. There are also, I don't know if they're up yet, but we can add whatever, like the little buyer cards that you can cut in two, where the customer takes the reminder and the store has a copy, and they fill it out. That's good for the more relationship model, sort of definitely much better. You need to track the customer somehow so you know what's going on. So I think we can get those up as well, but I'm not sure they're there right now. And anything else that you have seen, if you don't see it, let us know, and I'm sure we'll share anything we have.
Hans, can you hear?
Yep.
So this is Georgette. I'm wondering, when I approach the retailer or whomever, like, I did look through the toolbox and a lot of the papers, and some of that looked like you would either be sitting down with the person once they committed to what you were doing, but was there something specific, like a little handout, like when you first walk in there and you talk to them and you say, give them the overview and pretty much the verbal description, but then you have something to leave with them? And should we be mentioning that it's aligned with a UVM project or this whatever, farm fresh boxes, not just UVM, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you walk in, you bridge the fact that you talk to them. Now, normally when I go in cold to sell something or other, I leave them like what I would term as a fresh sheet. But I didn't do that this time. So is there something that explains this project, or are we sort of representing ourselves, doing our own thing?
This is Diane. There is, in some of the marketing material, there is a short descriptor of what the program is, and we developed that to go in and talk to the retailers and ask them if they wanted to partner with us. And so that could be modified and used by you so that and then you leave it with them, and then they can call you back and say, yes, I'm interested, and have a longer conversation, or no, I'm not going to do this. And then you can say, is there someone else you would pass this along to? Is there another retailer or partner that you might suggest? So that's what we did, and that is available in, I believe it's available in the toolkit. And if not, I'll make sure it is.
Okay, thank you.
And from Vermont to same thing. Yeah, that's a really good point and question. That in the toolkit, we designed it more for the grower preparing their what kind of box they would have, and the actual having sort of recruitment sheets, or to actually to pitch, let's say a pitch sheet, that you want to leave with someone. We do have some of that stuff. It's more informal. It's not part of the toolkit right now. Definitely, I know Julia has that too, and I can share with you, Georgette, what I have for Vermont. You can modify it. It's like a letter with some bullet points, and it does talk through the research project. You don't need to mention that at this point, right? Because this isn't a branded thing. You could use the leftover, stickers we have. You could change the name, you could keep it the same, you can do whatever makes sense. The other thing is we had postcards that are colorful, and they are for the customers, but they, as an example, you could give marketing materials to show that very quickly will bring to light if you show a flyer. And print out an idea kind of flyer, even an 8.5 by 11 version, the retailer will immediately get the idea, because it gives the information, as a customer would see it. And those are all on the website right now. And a postcard too that was meant for the customer, I think is up there, at least from Vermont. So Weiwei will be updating those, I believe, and maybe Weiwei, you could just mention where those are in a shared folder.
Yes, so if you are on our list, then you will automatically get an update about the Google folder. If you're having any trouble with the Google folder, you can contact me via email, but you should just be able to click on the link and access those files there. I did also include a new folder with the order forms and different marketing materials that our team has used in the past. So there is a folder in there along with the session 1 short course PowerPoint. And then the videos for the last 2 sessions are now available on YouTube, which is also linked in the email that I sent to you earlier and my previous emails as well.
And that's a great point from Georgette, that not only do we need the marketing materials and the logistics information, but the information that farmers can share, sort of the pitch sheet that farmers can share with potential retail partners. And if it, like Hans said, it's not an official UVM, University of California, University of Washington project anymore, because we're rolling it out now for farms to work and retailers to work independently. However, if you feel like it would be helpful for you to say, this is based on a, pick your state, this is based on a UVM project, and it's been successful in other areas, I'd like to try it here. Here's some information on this project. That may, the more I think about it, we should be giving you, more guidance and structure in terms of that initial meeting. It's one thing if you already have a relationship with a retailer, but if you're walking in cold, it could be very helpful to have a more structured approach and a handout. So that's something that we'll all work together and make sure we provide you with some sort of template.
Thank you, because you don't want to waste that opportunity that initial meet and greet. If you're not sitting down, you're just walking in there and bringing the idea to them, and it's new to them as well as the person explaining it. But
right.
Exactly. You want to show up looking professional and prepared and say, this is something that's worked in other places. What do you think about trying it here in our community?
Right. And when I had done other things, it seems like if I give them my fresh sheet with pictures, the pictures captivate them, and and even in an email, people like to look at the once they see the picture of the tomatoes or whatever, they're intrigued. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Thank you. And this, I also want to make the point that especially us extension in California, Washington, Vermont, like our job is to support this over time. So this is a starting point. And again, this season, Georgette and anyone else who wants to work on any version of this, you know, stay in touch with me. I'm happy to follow up as best I can and help modify or send you what you need that I can do within the capacity I have.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm looking at the time here. We only have a few minutes left. So I want to close by reminding you the third part of this 3-part short course is on Thursday, March 5th, same time as today. And what we'll be talking about is diving into a little bit more of the logistics and especially the marketing strategy and materials. Just like this one, there's no fee. Feel free to join, and this will certainly build on your knowledge and experience. And you've got the homework assignment from Hans already, and that will be Wei is going to send you an email afterwards, and she'll reiterate the homework assignment as well as where to find the materials. We'll also make a point during the next session to talk about next steps, since we don't have any more of these scheduled meetings planned, but we don't want to leave you hanging. So we'll make sure you have our contact info and resources for moving forward. Can I have the next slide? And now we just want to take a moment to check in with you about how things worked out for today. And like last time with the end of session poll, actually, all the polls are confidential, but like last time with the end of session poll, we're not going to publish the results. So feel free to be brutally honest and frank. Tell us how today worked out for you. And also, this isn't confidential, but feel free to type into the chat any suggestions or ideas or things you want to make sure we cover next time. As I mentioned, Wei will be following up with you with an email, and you can also, so you've got her contact info, and you can always respond to her if you want to set up a time to meet with Hans and Craftsberry, or connect somehow a little farther.
Can I just say one thing about this poll? Just it's a word. I was supposed to update, potentially tweak the poll to reflect what we ended up doing. And so we did make a little change with, we were originally going to actually make a physical financial logistic plan. So you see the past tense is used there. And I would we ended up really just discussing and getting into it and showing it to like all the elements of it. So I would say this is as a result that you you feel able to create a plan. So that I would like to just throw that in there right now. If you can use was and am able, switch to present and future tense.
Thanks, Hans.
Yep.
And let's see, I think we've got one more slide here. Basically acknowledging the folks who helped to put this on. And that's about it for today. Again, feel free to keep in touch by the chat and by email, and we're looking forward to seeing you again on March 5th.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.